Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. This time, The Siege. Yeah, Deep Space Nine, The Siege, the end of the trilogy. It's not Revenge of the Sith, but it sure as hell isn't The Rise of Skywalker. It's The Siege, because this is It's All Been Tracked Before. You might want to put a siege on me after that, but don't put a siege on this show or the network. Become a Patreon member, patreon.com/IABD. Doesn't take much. Come follow us. Lay siege to our sensibilities. I don't know. You'll lay siege to all the goodies is what you're going to lay siege to, because you're going to get all of them. And you're going to get all this, the siege on It's All Been Tracked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome, so I guess not all your regular hosts, just some of them. Yeah. We wanted to have your regular hosts, but, we're in a siege right now, and Keith is kind of locked down on the other side. Right. So hopefully we'll get to him. He was evacuated with the civilians. But when he returns, then we'll get his take on the siege. What was your first impression of this final of 3-part story?
You know what? I thought it tied it all together nicely. And maybe it's just the positive feelings from the first 2 episodes, but I thought a lot happened. I thought that, you can get caught up in wrapping things up, but I thought the momentum kept going. And I enjoyed it. Some things happened that I expected, some that I didn't. So some nice surprises. And I thought this was a good episode for, I thought all the side characters started, and I shouldn't say all the side characters, but some of the side characters that we hadn't liked as much or whatever, like Bashir and some of those guys started to make themselves more, likable is not the best word, but more interesting, I guess. So.
Some of the main characters who've gotten less developed in season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the same thing of Dax. Like, not that she wasn't interesting, but it felt like she got more development in this episode than the whole first season.
Yep.
So I was pleased to see that. Yeah, my first impression from a 2023 perspective, I was a little disappointed at just how separate each of the 3 parts were, because they were very separate. I mean, we even had another one guest star that they added for the 3rd part that wasn't in the first 2, because they still did them very separately. But for when this aired, what was that, 93, 94? The fact that they opened the season with a 3-parter was incredible. It was not something, I think they had to sneak it past the studio by giving them separate titles. And stuff. But overall, I'm like, I think this was a good blueprint to what they're going to get to do later on, where there's no reason for DS9 to reset every week. Let's just tell a story, and it can kind of tie in, but it could also be its own thing, and it can just keep moving and developing, and I appreciate that.
I had that thought at the end, like, okay, I'm curious to see what next week's episode is coming off of this. Are there still coattails, or is still connection? Obviously, there's some connections, but
there will be things this season that are connected to this story.
Okay.
But we talked about that the election of the new Kai won't be till the end of the season, so we'll still have stuff with that going on. But it's not going to be a front and center this season. It's kind of like procedurals now, where they'll introduce a big story in like the season premiere, and then you'll get it again in the season finale, but not a lot in between. And I feel like that's their Bajor story this season. But we're also going to get a lot of other things set up in season 2 that tie in later that pay off. Okay. So we're not past the days of standalone stories on DS9. And even in the final season, there's some standalone stories set within the broader context.
Well, and we talked about how, as much as we love Discovery, getting back to kind of an episode by episode basis on Strange New Worlds was fun. Although they also have those arcs, season-long arcs going on too, and character development arcs going on, which I think is
my argument of why this is not like Discovery and won't fall into the same pitfalls, because Discovery has certainly developed a formula that is frustrating to a lot of us. I love Discovery, but they don't need to save the whole freaking galaxy every season.
Yes.
With DS9, the war is essentially like 3 full seasons of the show of the 7 years. And so it's not like we start this arc and by the end of the season, we're going to finish it. It's more just, these are this people in this place. These things are happening around them. Things are going to build upon one another. Every week isn't totally focused on that. But when you're in a war, a lot of the story is going to be focused on the war.
Right.
And so for 3 years, the last 3 years of the show, that's a lot of the show. Wow. And unlike Discovery, it's not like, here's the season arc. It's more of the larger fabric of the show, which I like better than. I don't think you need to solve everything from the premiere to the finale.
Yeah, and especially by the last season, and we'll see what the next. When I say
the final season Discovery,
final season Discovery, what that holds, but by that third and fourth season especially, it was like, okay, I know the beats for this season. You've moved around some of the furniture and stuff, but
I really loved season 1. They just should not have stayed the same formula 5 years in a row.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So and Picard, same thing. It was a season-long arc of Picard every season, and I'm sorry, Prodigy, I felt like did it better, where it was more balanced. And there was an overall arcing season, but every episode wasn't building on this one thing. It was more, we're in this universe, we're in this story, these are what the characters are going through this week.
Yep.
But it wasn't all wrapped up by the end of season 1 either. I know some of it was wrapped up, but there's still more mystery left. And I feel like that's more of the DS9 model. That there's still a lot of unanswered questions at the end of Prodigy season 1.
Yep. Yeah.
Although I love Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks and their model of singular as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway. But yeah, DS9 is great. I will say the previous Leon was really long. It was 2 full minutes, which felt longer than it was. And I have to think that's because this still aired in the days where they weren't used to having to tune in every week. So if you're going to do a 3-part story, they had to retell the first 2 parts, not just last week, but both parts.
Or if you stumbled across it, on the second run, you hadn't seen the first 2. It's like, I want to sit around and watch this. Okay, you know what? I think I can figure it out.
I mean, that's to its detriment. I would have rather had another minute of runtime, but or 2.
Yes. Yeah, I think there was room for more.
But I get it. So we start out with a scene where Sisko is front and center, acting as the commander, but he's reminding the crew of their connection to Bajor. And, he's going to stay to oversee the evacuation, but I do believe he's sincere at this moment when he says, I won't hold it against you, anybody that wants to leave. I think he's truthful.
Yeah.
They're not clear. Starfleet doesn't approve of this, right? Like, I guess they're going to not get in trouble because they can justify it that there was some sneaky espionage that they're going to expose. Right. But what they did not get approval of the Admiralty for this plan of action. And that, if this were the Enterprise D, the Admiralty is going to micromanage them and get them out of there. Whereas nobody's paying attention to DS9 still, even though it's become a major hub. And that's the only reason they get away with it. It's similar to why the show gets away with what it gets away with.
That's a good that's a perfect analogy. I enjoyed the crew. I literally thought they were saying murmur whenever they had a little murmur. It did feel like a Trek kind of thing. I mean, I think obviously they would do Kirk's people would do it for him as well, but yeah, I definitely felt like I love the excuses of like, well, that medical equipment's going to take a while for me to get that out of here and all that stuff. So that was.
Did it feel earned to you, though? Because I'm not sure I was fully sold on it being earned this early in the run.
Chief O'Brien was the only one. But then that got complicated for me because at first I'm like, of course, good guy. And then I'm like, oh, no, Keiko O'Brien. And then we got, oh, geez. Oh, boy. You know what? Maybe it is good to stay separate. You know what? Go, Keiko. Take the kid.
Well, Keiko and Molly, I don't think Keiko should have been arguing to stay, quite honestly.
I agree.
Because they have the young child.
I agree, totally.
I think she should have. What was the way they portrayed it was she was mad that she wasn't staying with him, rather than she wasn't mad he wasn't going with them. And I really think
that's a good point.
I really think she should have been mad he wasn't going with them. And I think in this case, as much as I love O'Brien, this would have been a good opportunity for character development that he would have left with the rest of the evacuees and set the story out.
Yeah.
I think he should have, quite honestly.
He's married to his space station.
But he's not. I mean, he's put in a lot of effort on the space station, but you've got a wife and young child. You've got those responsibilities. Jake's older, so Sisko sending Jake away doesn't have the same impact of O'Brien sending Molly away. Well,
and if you go with our theory, and I think you mentioned one of our other fellow Star Trek podcasts mentioning, the troubled marriage of Keiko O'Brien. That's another reason that he shouldn't be. I mean, that's just going to put even more stress on the marriage. So
I have not listened to their review of this episode yet, but my guess would be their argument is he's so ready to be out of the marriage, he'd rather die than evacuate. That's what they frequently go to, the Greatest Generation podcast.
Yeah, that too.
But I did not get that impression at all. I felt like he was doing his duties as Starfleet officer. And I really felt, so again, because they're hiding in ducks and they're not even able to stay in their apartment, that's where I'm really having a problem with Keiko saying, Molly and I should stay. No, not in that situation. But you really felt the difference between DS9 and the Enterprise D, where you have all those families and children. And DS9, granted, when it becomes a war zone, you're going to try to get some of the civilians out. And they do. There are fewer civilians on the station in later days because of that. But we're also still in the early days where it hasn't, because it's a dead end station.
Yeah.
While it would be safe for families to move, the people that are being assigned there are not necessarily the ones with families. And the people whose families are in Bajor, they're close enough they can go home on the weekends and commute. So they're not going to have their families there. Yeah. Whereas next gen, there'd be a lot more of that to contend with.
Right.
I think our DS9 evacuees we saw were the civilians, the aliens that run the shops and things. And that was more who they were getting out of the way, which is a difference of DS9.
It reminded me a lot of, and this is definitely not a perfect analogy, but the last helicopter out of Saigon kind of a thing. You know, we have, and just recently, I guess I'm dating it, but you can look it up on the internet. You know, the Sudan just kind of had a similar thing where it's like everyone's got to get out because this is again a civil war.
6 months ago, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When this episode goes live.
So it did have that feeling because at first I'm like, well, why don't they get ships there and all that, you know, to get them out? I'm like, nope, that's not the way it works. There was a heck out there, and so they've got those three things and.
And there was a fine line here because essentially they're treating it as if the provisional government has collapsed at Bajor.
Yeah,
but it hasn't collapsed. Jaro's just taken control.
Yes.
They're still have ministers. They're still meeting.
Right.
So it's one of those weird situations where it's like a quiet coup rather than a violent, loud coup.
Yeah. And I mentioned Sudan, which I know was in some ways similar because I know it was military leaders taking over. Well, actually, no, that was actually definitely a civil war. It was definitely violent. But yeah, then again, I feel like there are some that are like this, where it's like, no, there's still government, but it's like, not for long, or it doesn't feel like for long, you know. And you know, and I think that's what happened in the Sudan, and then led to the civil war. While we're here on Keiko O'Brien, just for one more second, I'm sorry Keith isn't here. What I want to call a child acting corner, because I thought Molly acted good. The actress that plays her,
Hannah Haiti,
the same actress that we've had.
Yeah, not the original Molly, but we've had in the last couple appearances, and I'm pretty sure will be the Molly from here on out.
I thought her emoting was good and everything, but I almost thought there was someone off camera, just the way she was looking, because it was a shot of just her and not Madeline. Is it Madeline? Rosalind Chow.
Rosalind Chow.
And but it looked like she was looking not at where O'Brien was,
but at her real mom.
Else. Yeah. Who was like, okay, now you're and again, I don't think it affected her performance. It was just where her eyes drifted.
She was 5 years old when they filmed this.
Exactly. Hey, yeah, I'm not that good at this point.
Hannah Haiti was in Molly's last appearance of Next Gen. And then she does 11 episodes of DS9, which I'm pretty sure is all the episodes Molly's in of DS9. So she'll be in all 7 seasons. Looks like at least once, usually 2 or 3 times a season. So, well,
better than the kids in whatever that episode was with Picard's the dad or whatever. Yeah,
she'll grow up on the show, not as much as Jake and Nog, because they're both in the show so much more than her. It's kind of funny, if you asked me at the beginning of the show if Nog or Molly would be more developed, I would have guessed Molly, but it's not. It's Nog, and I think a lot of that stems from Rosalind Chow turning down the lead role. Had she agreed to it, I think Molly would have. They may have even recast Molly with more of a professional actress. Honestly,
yeah, I agree. I think they would have been more featured. Yeah, for sure.
I think Hannah Haiti gets better as it goes on.
Yeah,
I think when they give her stuff later, it's decent. But she's still a child. She's never going to get to teenage years in this show.
Yeah.
So
Not everyone.
I would be very interested
off.
to see her reprise the role as Molly now and see what that looks like.
Yeah. Speaking of
And if they
Nog,
brought Molly back now, they have to use her. Like she's the
for
definitive
sure.
Molly. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nog, I like the Jake Nog parting. I like that conversation. And
It's so sweet.
I think Nog was the one who was like, do you think members of our species or whatever have ever had this close of a relationship, blah, blah, blah?
And they haven't.
Yeah, it felt to me like it was last day of high school. I wrote "Stay cool forever." I mean, obviously, I know they're going to see each other later, but at the time, the way they played it, I enjoyed it very much.
I think it really hammers home the value of the space station. That these cultures are mixing in a way they don't other places necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, Jake and Nog, at this point, I know it doesn't quite feel earned, but by this point, they are best friends and they are solid and they will be forever. I mean, the actors that played them did a podcast rewatch of the show only a few years ago until Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog, passed away, and then Jake continued it without him. They only got through season 1 before Aaron Eisenberg died, so we never got his thoughts on this episode, this scene. And I have not listened to Garrick Lofton's review of this episode yet, but I will. I did listen to him the first 2 of this season. I think I love that part of DS9 and what that allows in this. Speaking of the interspecies and stuff, I was really left wondering because my brain wants to know the logistics of who gets the seat because there's only 3 runabouts. So very limited. And the Quark's selling seats. And I'm like, wait a second. Who's he selling them to? Because Starfleet had the option to leave. Their families get to leave. And so what I've come to the conclusion, I don't think it was explicit, but I think it was clear that the people that got the seats, they had enough spaces on the runabout for the Starfleet families and the civilians that are not connected to Bajor. And who Quark was selling them to were other Bajorans. And I think they decided to leave the Bajorans up to their own leaving because they're right there, right? They could get off themselves. And there's a bit in that I think iterates this when they're trying to all leave and it's Bajorans that get pushed back while Morn gets on the runabout. Another great Morn cameo. But the Bajorans get pushed back and there's some like mention that they would be viewed as collaborators to the Starfleet that are going to fight back. And so that is where that line drew for me. Like when we left Afghanistan, you're taking all the Americans out, but you're leaving the Afghanistans that worked with the Americans.
Yeah.
Starfleet didn't have enough resources to evacuate the Bajorans that worked with them and are leaving them behind to the hostile government. And that was you can spare a starship to come evacuate them, right? That's not right.
Saigon was the same way. Yeah, the last copter out of Vietnam was a lot of those guys were.
It was a little rough to see the Bajorans hanging off in the cells of the runabout and then dying in space. That was rough, but you have to be realistic. You have to show those things so we get the hammer home. So Quark, obviously I'm facetious. I'm going to not explain when I'm facetious because those that are listening have watched the episode, I'm assuming. Obviously, Quark wants to sell Rom's seat. And and then he's like, no, I won't sell your seat. We'll get other people and we'll broker their seats. He's the ticket master making the money off the Taylor Swift tickets instead of because he's not getting up his own seat. But then Rom double crosses him and gives it to a Dabo girl. And I have to wonder, I don't think it is. I have to wonder if it's the Dabo girl that Rom ends up marrying, but she hasn't been introduced to the show yet. But I don't think she's up to like season 3 or 4, so I doubt it's her. But I still like, in my headcanon, he's already dating her and gave her Quark seat.
That makes sense. And
that's why she marries him. It's the true love.
Yeah, I love that he's like, oh, I know what you're up to. I know what you're doing, buddy. Brother. Yeah. I know what's going on here.
But that scene where Quark is hauled in front of Ops and Sisko's like strangling him, which first of all, a little too far, Cisco. A little too far. But the thing that came out of that scene is really they're going to still let Quark leave after that? Like he should be punished and have to stay. They should put him in a holding cell and just leave him there.
Yeah.
And yet they still managed to squeak in an actual goodbye between Quark and Odo at the end of that scene, which was shocking that even fit. It worked, but it was shocking that it worked following what just happened.
I also love when he said, this is an acceptable, I should have it here. I didn't write it down perfectly. It's an acceptable Ferengi transit
Yes, to oversell.
He overbooked, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, so I just wrote down, yeah, that's every Earth airline too. They do the same thing. So we're gonna strangle a Quark for something that it's regularly done.
I mean, they should. They should strangle Quark for that, and they should strangle the airlines that do that. Quark should go to the Odo cell, just like the people on the airlines that make these decisions should be locked up as well.
Yeah. I mean, I love it if I don't have to be somewhere, whatever flight I'm taking, if it's like I don't have to be there right away, because I love getting bumped.
Well, if they
some good deals out of that, but
when they're willing to pay somebody to be bumped, that's a little bit different. Like if somebody's at the last minute and they're like, and I know this isn't how it works, but if they were like, oh, we'll pay you if you let them bump the seat, but they're not guaranteed a seat. That's not how it works. That's how it should work, right?
Yeah.
Linalis decides to stay, and he's the one that talks the Bajorans into staying, and man, they sure give in easily when he tries to talk to them.
Yeah.
Like, I know he's a hero and everything, but is that really all it takes, is him half-heartedly saying you should stay for them all to say, sure, we'll stay?
I guess so. And I guess, they really tried to sell us on, well, I guess because we know Linalis is, I mean, we've seen him confess, like, I'm not a hero.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. But
I wanted more Linalis.
I did too.
We got so much of him in the first episode. We got him like not at all in the second episode, barely. And that was understandable. But I wanted more of him in the conclusion.
And again, I'm a Richard Beymer. I love Richard Beymer. West Side Story is my favorite. First or second, probably still first. Favorite film musical. And I loved his later work, Twin Peaks and here. I liked what he was doing. So yeah, I wanted more. He says, how can you abandon it like frightened Cardassian bulls? And I think somebody even repeats it, bulls, or maybe I did. Maybe I just did it sitting there to Chloe. But and bull is a rodent on Earth, so I'm guessing it's. So
in the DS9
rodent, though.
In the DS9 novels, DS9 Deep Space Nine has a much bigger problem with voles than rats. They're like the rats in DS9.
All right.
The Cardassian voles are what's infested the station.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've seen voles in my backyard at my old house. We've got them around.
Jake tries to. Right? Okay, they look like big. They just look like big.
They're
they're more like hamsters.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, I'd say they're almost a cross between mice and rats, but they're not. Yeah. They're not as awful as rats.
They're relatives of lemmings and hamsters, but with a stouter body.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen them when my cats murdered them and brought them to my door and offered them as sacrifice to me.
That's what cats do. Cats
they do. Not because I read somewhere that it's not because they love you. It's because they think you're not smart and skilled enough to hunt for yourself. So they're feeding you.
Yeah.
And I believe it. I believe it. Jake tries to stay. And I get that. The big surprise of that scene is Benjamin Sisko gives him a letter that he wrote on paper. Where did he find paper to write Jake a letter?
That's a good question.
It should be an electronic tablet, right?
Right.
Like, I've downloaded it to your profile. Access your computer when you get to where you're going.
They threw it in when he got that baseball.
We'll get to the baseball in a minute. But yeah. Then we are introduced to the one new character this week, Colonel Day, played by the great Steven Weber.
Yeah.
This is his only Star Trek episode, which is a crime, in my opinion. He's best known for, according to IMDb, Dracula Dead and Loving It, Hamburger Hill, Single White Female, and the 1997 version of The Shining, where he played Jack Torrance, which Stephen King said was better. I've seen it. The Jack Nicholson version's better.
I was going to ask you if you'd seen it. I have not seen that.
I have. Yeah. Stephen King said it was a lot truer to the book, but I liked the Kubrick movie better. I just did. But I think he's best known for Wings. That should be at the top.
Too. I know he did a lot of other things, but
Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. I loved him in that.
There too. Yeah.
I'm a big Steven Weber fan, so I was thrilled to see him.
Had Wings started yet at this point?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so.
Get around to that.
No. Well, yes. Sorry. Yes. This was right in the middle of Wings.
Okay.
Wings ran 90 to 97, and this was 93.
Okay. I wonder if, feels like Wings and Seinfeld could have been right down. Maybe they were all in the same.
He had no Seinfeld credit, maybe because he was doing Wings.
Maybe that's what it was.
But you have to think he must have really been a Star Trek fan to make time while he's a series regular elsewhere to come do this.
Right.
I didn't look that up, but that has to be one of those things. And
I meant to pull
also
it up.
the fact that he's only in one of the 3 parts, you probably have to only be in one of the 3 parts when you're still a series regular. It says Star Trek.com just says he took time out midway through his run on Wings to appear.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know, but I Googled and I don't see anything about him being a big fan or anything, but
Yeah.
I feel like he's got to be to do that. I guess some actors take other jobs on their summer hiatus, but
Sure.
3 seasons in, I wouldn't think you would unless you really wanted to.
I mean, he got to be the bad guy or whatever, kind of, but still wasn't a huge role in the episode.
Yeah, I don't know.
But maybe he was like, are Frank Langella and Louise Fletcher already there? Yeah. All right, I'll do it. But,
yeah, could be.
wait, and Richard Bamer. Yeah.
That could very well be. Steven Weber's most recent credits, because he's still very much active. He has been in 46 episodes of Chicago Med in the last 3 years. So he joined the cast of Chicago Med a few years ago, and that's where he's a series regular now, which is a waste of his talents. Get him off of that, put him on some prestige television, in my opinion. They've all evacuated. The Bajoran militia's here. We had the General Krim, who we met last week, leading the invasion. And I got the impression he was a good guy. So I was in last week's episode. So I was a bit confused of his actions here. I was satisfied by the end of this with his motivation, but I was confused when he first showed up.
I was too. I had this, and then I think Cisco kind of talks about it, and then they kind of talk him into it, or like, you should probably do this kind of a thing. But
well, I think that makes sense when they basically tell Steven Weber, hey, give a message to your boss. Yeah. And then he does it because his boss is like, I would have very much liked to have known that. Yeah. Like, I almost feel like Cisco doesn't need to hide in the ceiling. He should have just greeted him at the airlock and said, hey, I got some extenuating evidence. Yeah. You want to see it? And I feel like General Krim would have said, sure. And then you don't have an episode, though.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Because General Krim was an honorable man. He was just misled. So instead, Starfleet's hiding in the ceiling, and we have this delightful scene where they're eating combat rations. And not only that, so O'Brien loves them, which is a wonderful character trait for some reason, that he loves them when everybody else hates them. And then we get the trivia that Bashir created a nutritional candy bar in his Starfleet Academy days. Because he's that much of a genius, and that's what he puts his genius to. Loved all of that. When Krim enters Cisco's office and the baseball's there,
yes,
I know you may not. Okay, so it may not have been. I don't know how it felt to a first-time viewer. In my opinion, because there will be other times when Cisco leaves and comes back. If the baseball's there, it means he's coming back. And if you leave that is a message. So as soon as I saw the baseball, and I know it wasn't a stat, I doubt you would have felt that way. No. And I don't think it's established in season 2. But when I saw the message, because there's a very big time later in the series where that baseball's left as a message, I'm like, I get it. I get it right now.
I just knew it was Chekhov's baseball that Krim was going to have to pick it up.
Oh,
he was sitting there, I'm like, he's got to grab it.
It never played a part later in the episode.
No, but I just knew he was going to pick it up. Which makes sense. If I was the actor playing Krim, it's like,
oh yeah.
If you're going to put it in front of me, I'm going to pick it up. And maybe they told him to, but either way, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then we get Dax and Kira on their mission to Bajor.
Yeah.
And then we get a great scene where Dax talks about trills are very allergic to insects. And then Kira talks about eating spider dogs for lunch when she was a rebel.
And then
Dax hits her head because she's taller than the Bajorans.
And maybe I wrote this, but when they run into that creature, does Dax say, is that a spider or a dog?
Yeah, and she's like, it's kind of both.
It was hilarious. It was a hilarious Muppet, but it didn't bother me. I enjoyed it.
I just liked the dialogue twist where she's like, I bet you kept it as a pet, and Kira's like, no, we ate it.
Yes.
I don't know. I do have a question though for you. When they make the metaphor that the Bajorans were the insects and the Cardassians were allergic to them the way that the Trills are allergic to insects, did that metaphor really work?
I don't think so.
I don't think it did.
No.
I think they were trying to be clever. This was written by Michael Piller, the showrunner. I think he was trying to be clever, and I don't think it quite landed. He needed a writing room to give him some feedback.
I will say, I think I think the Kira Dax scenes all passed the Bechdel test.
Yes.
Because they were just talking about what the job they were doing and stuff.
And if this episode 3 had happened before episode 1, it would have felt so much more justified that Kira saw Dax in the vision and their friendship and all of that.
Right.
This earned that retroactively.
Yeah. And, they could have very well talked about a dude, because Kira's got the monk and,
Vedic
Dax is always talking about her stuff. So, yeah. So, but I was like, wait a minute, is this happening? And that was the first scene. And then I think the rest of their scene worked that way. Speaking of that, real quick, I think, and I didn't check this out to verify, but the sound quality, once they're under attack, the battle scene, it all sounded very ADR, like, they had to redub it for some reason. Like, it matched up really well, but it had a sound quality that there was kind of a weird, kind of an echo to it, especially when I think it was Kira's lines. So it was distracting to me only in that way, but everything matched up. It was good ADR, but other than I'm like, that sounds differently than, but and that's just a weird thing I noticed.
I was trying to look up the Bechdel test count for episodes. Obviously, Discovery has passed it a lot. DS9 is almost written completely by males, so from the writing room perspective, did not pass. Okay. But I'm still looking through the data, but I got to think DS9 probably passes it more than most Star Treks. I guess Voyager has several strong female characters too. Yeah. So I bet DS9 and Voyager did a better job than TNG did, because TNG really failed that Bechdel. Every time they had Crusher and Troy together, it was so awful. They barely had any episodes that passed the Bechdel, whereas I feel like DS9. So looking at this chart, it says 7.5% of original series passed it. That seems high. It says 44.9% of next gen episodes passed it. That seems too high. It says 57.8% of DS9, and 86.9% of Voyager.
Wow.
And then only 39% of Enterprise, according to this chart. So backslide.
Maybe for TOS and TNG, it was maybe we always just think of the main characters talking, and maybe there were some ambassadors.
They would count guest characters, It doesn't have to be main characters. Yeah, it looks like season 5 of TNG was the most Bechdel friendly.
Okay.
And DS9, it looks like the first 3 seasons are more friendly than 4 through 7, which is disappointing to me. Wow. Voyager, only season 3 kind of sucks on that scale. I will say, it was pointed out to me the other day in one of those clickbait articles that Captain Pike is the Janeway of this era of New Trek, because with the cancellation of Discovery, they didn't count Prodigy in this, I guess, because it's a kid's show on a different Nickelodeon instead of whatever. But they said of the other Star Trek shows, Pike is now the only male captain. Or not, sorry, before Discovery, but with the cancellation of Picard. Because Discovery is a female captain, Lower Decks is a female captain.
Oh, that's right.
Prodigy, Dal is kind of the captain. We get the Janeway. But yeah, they talked about how they've got several shows with a female captain and only one with a male captain. So it's the reverse Janeway.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It is.
And if you're going to only have one male captain, let's let it be Pike.
Right.
Nobody's going to fault you for having a show with Pike, right? He's awesome.
Especially
because his show is, it's funny because it's set 10 years before the original series, but it's so Bechdel friendly.
Yeah.
Like, you have all these strong, wonderful female characters. Thank goodness.
Yep.
Good course correction.
Yes.
So Jara's talking about Lee Nahlas, and he's like, basically, we can buy him. We'll just offer him something. He's got a price, and he'll fall in line. I don't think Lee would, from the little bit we've got of him. I feel like 99% of people would.
Yes.
And I think that's where the true heroism of Lee lies. And we'll talk more at the end of the episode of if we think he's a hero or not. But I think part of his heroism is, in this moment, he's a rare person that would not be sold out, not be viable.
Yeah, I think he's been through enough, or been through it that he's. Yeah,
I don't even think
he wants to make amends. I mean, he's been talking about it since the first episode of this.
I don't even think it's an amends things, though. I just feel like his personality is, and that's part of why he pushes the hero term away so much. Is he's got this moral code that he sticks to, and his moral code would not let him sell out.
Yeah.
But of course, Jaro promises Win that she'll be Kai if she falls in line, and she does fall in line. She's his co-conspirator here.
This answer may change with the end of the episode, but maybe not. Not necessarily, I guess, now that I think about it. Are Win and Jaro getting it on?
I think it's implied.
Yeah.
Because we can see with Barial that medics are allowed to sleep with people.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like she's definitely going to do it. And I think, Jaro, he's Frank Langella. He can do whatever he wants.
I will not tell you when or where, but DS9, we will see Win in a sexual relationship.
All right.
So it's coming.
All right. She didn't feel chaste to me. It's not Nurse Ratched.
No.
It's Louise Fletcher.
I think the fact that down the road we see very explicitly that she's in a sexual relationship supports that this was a sexual relationship.
I was going to say, well, later, she kind of turns, bails on Jaro, but that doesn't mean that we're not in a sexual relationship.
No, we'll get to that too here in a sec. We'll be at those moments very soon.
We'll get
there. But yeah. So the Starfleet officers didn't wear uniforms, which is why I think Starfleet did not approve of their course of action. Again, there was a better way to handle it than what they did, but whatever. It was a fun episode. The cargo room and the cargo bay ambush, where he's like, we should send somebody like Lee Nallis, and Bashir's like, I got this. And then he does have it.
Yeah.
And then Cisco even gives that wink. Like, all of that was gold. I loved that so much. I'm like, I told you Bashir in season 1, as insufferable as he is, he doesn't stay that way. And I feel like he's already past it.
I loved when he kicked in the panel or whatever and does his little thing. I wrote down James Bashir Bond. James Bashir Bond.
Part of me thinks, though, I wouldn't be so delighted by Bashir here had he not been so horrible in season 1.
I think that's fair.
Because it feels. Whereas if O'Brien had accomplished it, you'd just be like, sure, of course O'Brien did it.
Of course. Yeah. It makes sense.
We went back to another Jadzia and Kira scene, and I just wrote, this is so great, just the two of them. But that thing cannot be airtight. The way it closed in the previous scene, and they're up in space.
Yeah.
That does not make sense to me.
Did not. Yeah. I mean, I know it was supposed to be a bucket of bolts, and I get that, but yeah.
But space-worthy is a different standard. Yeah. And then they survived the crash. That did not look stable enough to let them survive a crash in it.
Well, I think Dax says, where are we going to land? And I think Kira says, how about right here? And then they just both do the duck and cover thing. So
which they have to.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's good enough for a nuclear bomb, it's good enough for a crash landing.
Exactly what I was thinking. I was like, yep. And then Kira, they get out, and Kira, Nana Visitor does like a cross-eyed, like, and then I wrote that, and then when I started the episode again, because I stopped there, and because I was probably getting cross-eyed because it was late when I was first watching, then I was like, you know what? She's concussed. That makes sense.
Yeah,
she would be that way, and then we find out, her hips all jacked up or broken hip. So
yeah, they had to repair it.
Yeah.
Well, and of course we get the heroic moment where Dax, she tells Dax to leave her, and Dax doesn't.
Right.
Good friendship moment.
Yeah.
And also just good hero moment.
Mm-hmm.
When the station's under siege, we get a great morph of Odo becoming a tripwire. And he even takes the time to put not just a wire, but like post holding the wire, and those posts have like decoration on them.
Yes.
Like, why are there decoration on the post? You go as most utilitarian as you could, right?
I wrote down, did Odo turn himself into a tripwire? And yes, he did. You confirmed.
Yeah, but not just the tripwire. I don't know if you noticed, the post had like carvings on the side. That's what made no sense to me. I was like, really? Yeah. Well, I guess he's probably only seen the one tripwire, and he has to echo that exactly. But I'm like, no, more utilitarian.
Yeah. And it didn't seem like he had a lot of time to think about it either. So just boom, whatever was in his head is what happened.
The power's knocked off on DS9 so much that like the lights are off, but the holosuite's still operating.
Right.
I guess Quark, well, we find out in Star Trek Picard, they put dedicated circuits on the holosuite. They found that out in season 3. But I guess Quark probably has dedicated circuits because of the business he does and the way he operates.
He probably has his own generators. Yeah.
I really feel like it should have been more of a part of the story that Quark was part of that deception, like suggested it, or they had to force him to help them rather than just hiding out. I mean, it was fun to get him dragging the gold and everything, but I think since they were in his bar, he should have been part of that. But then we get the capturing Steven Weber, and that's when he lies to Krim, and he's like, no, they didn't tell me anything. Because I think Weber's character is a true believer in Jarrah's mission, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He's a total co-conspirator.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And and that makes total sense why he's there, because he seems to be Krim's second in command, but Jarrah can't trust Krim. Krim's too honorable. So Dave's got to be there to knock Krim off the board if they need him to.
Uh-huh. That all makes sense. Yeah.
There's a really great scene between Sisko and Lee Nallis where Lee says he's willing to die, and Sisko says, yeah, of course you are. Dying lets you off the hook. Are you willing to live for your people?
Yeah.
That really hit home for me, and I thought that was a great moment of writing and acting.
I thought I just wrote down, it's a really good pep talk from Sisko. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but not too much. But I felt like either by the end of, it was definitely last week, or 2 weeks ago in our time, but the circle was last week, the last DS9. I would have bet a large sum of money that Lee Nallis was not making it to the end of this episode.
Yeah.
How that was going to play out, I didn't know, but yeah.
I mean, of course they had to have Steven Weber kill him because he's the villain. Because Krim's too honorable. It's got to be the villain, which is Weber. But his last words about, I got off the hook after all. It's such a bittersweet, tragic moment because of the Sisko speech we were just talking about. Because the debate is Lee Nallis heroic. Him dying there because of the talk makes him less heroic than if he lives. And yet at the same time, he did sacrifice his life for somebody.
He did.
So how can you call that unheroic?
Yeah.
I think he as a martyr, though, is good and heroic for Bajor.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they've been talking about for the last 3 weeks is, they need, Bajor needs its white knight,
That's why Jarrah didn't want to kill him, because they don't want a martyr. But that threads that needle, right? Where he gets to be a hero, but he doesn't have to suffer through what he doesn't want to suffer through.
That's right.
It finds that sweet spot narratively.
Well, and I thought he took a bad angle. I thought there was a way he could have got to Day and knocked he didn't have to take the laser. The phaser. Yeah,
but he wanted to die. So
I think there's something to that. There is something there. Like, I'm going out. This is it.
I liked it though. Ultimately, I enjoyed his character. Like I said, I wish he got more development, but he was a worthy 3-episode arc.
Yeah. It's good use of Richard Bateman. It was good. I really enjoyed it.
Back on Bajor, Bareilles the one that finds Kira and Dax, because of course Bareilles in love with Kira and has people out looking for her.
Yes.
Which is such a sweet moment, but I enjoyed that led to Dax and Kira putting on their religious robes and sneaking in. I kind of wanted some comedy scene of them sneaking past somebody, but I guess the previously on took too long, so you just go in and take them off.
When Terry Farrell came in, I was like, this is hilarious, but she even makes that look good. And then when they go in and they start whipping them off, it's like, all right, and the reveal is great too. So,
but did you like Terry Farrell Dax saying, I'm thinking of keeping the nose?
Yes, I enjoyed that as well.
I mean, I love the Bajor nose. I'm not opposed to it.
No.
It does not detract for her beauty at all. If anything, it only enhances.
Yes.
There's a scene between Quark and I think it's Sisko, or maybe it's Bashir. I don't remember who it's between. Quark and somebody, where they say something about his mother. And they would get another rule of acquisition, number 31, never make fun of a Ferengi's mother.
Yeah.
Which feels a little bit out of character of other Ferengi stuff, but we will get to see Quark's relationship with his mother, played by the great Andrea Martin, and it's delightful. So you got that to look forward to.
Yeah, that's perfect. I wrote, Bashir makes a your mother joke. He says, it's filled with gold pressed platinum and you know it. Who told you? Your mother did, the day you were born.
Yeah, Bashir. I liked Bashir so much in this episode. Yeah. So glad we're out of the bad Bashir era.
The very next thing is a mic drop from Lee Nallis when he says to the general, please don't resist, General. We don't wish to use deadly force. My name is Lee Nallis. Perhaps you've heard of me. It's like, I don't know. I'm kind of a big deal around here.
The only time he swings his weight around.
Yep.
And what a good use of it if you're going to swing your weight around.
Yeah.
Andrea Martin's only in one episode of DS9. I'm sorry. That character just feels bigger to me.
I'm excited regardless. I love Andrea Martin.
It's a good episode, but I feel like they talk about her a lot more. Anyway, Kira gives evidence to the Bajorans. And man, if you ever want to know the type of character Win is, that she immediately turns on Jaro and puts herself on the winning side because she knows which way the wind blows. It's frustrating that she escapes punishment 100%. And I know the first time through this, I was mad that she slobbered her way out of this. But in retrospect, this is the type of person she is. And I'm here for it. And not because I like the character, because of course I hate the character, but I love to hate the character.
Right.
Because she's so Louise Fletcher's delicious in that role. And that is just a great example of what she can do with that part. And it's why I think they chose to keep Win around so long, because
she was good at the, like we've talked about her as Nurse Ratched. She won an Oscar for it.
I need to watch that. Yes.
She's so smooth in that. It's a similar thing where her voice is so smooth and she's right here, but she's saying terrible things, but her voice is so mellifluous that you're like, wait, no, she's terrible. But
if they catch her here, which in any other Star Trek they would have, the fact that she's already been in 4 or 5 episodes is like, oh, that's enough of a run. Let's get rid of her.
Yep.
The fact that they chose to, and it's very possible it was a last minute decision. Like, oh, we like her, let's keep her around.
Sure.
But that moment is why she gets to stick around. Though, of course, the general's angry when he finds out about Weber not telling him, Colonel Day not telling him about the Cardassians, because the general is honorable. And then we get a reckoning with, after Lee dies, and we're in the epilogue of the episode, Kira and Sisko and the others having their drink, and Kira talking about what a hero Lee Nallis is, and Sisko saying, I know a hero, I'm sitting with one right now. Man, that did feel earned to me. I feel like Sisko and Kira's relationship is earned, and I totally agree with Sisko, even though there's no way Kira, being who she is, can see that right now.
Right.
But she was a hero of this, for sure.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the maintaining the O'Brien basically telling Sisko something about Lee Nallis. He's like, let him believe it. Don't mess with the myth. If they ever ask me, that's how I'm going to tell it. And I think that's a good example of Sisko's wisdom. And it's why he's going to do so well in his command role on DS9. Because you got to know when to tell the truth and when not to. And Picard, I feel like with his freaking hubris, would make sure the truth wins out over the myth. And that's a difference between Sisko and Picard as captain. Sisko recognizes when the truth can be, when it's better not to tell the truth.
Right. And he gave a similar speech in the opening episode, which I can't remember at this point, two episodes, 2 DS9 episodes ago, about, Keith and I said we need our white knight, but it carries different weight here because it's like, I think he's saying, not only is he saying we need to say this, but he's also saying, you know what, this guy, he did what he earned it. He earned it. Even though I get what O'Brien's saying too, like that guy, and even
he's the hero they need.
Yeah. Even Lee Nallis would be like, yeah, you're right. But
Lee Nallis would agree with O'Brien, but Sisko knows better.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we get a shot of Sisko and hugging his son.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. There's no important story point, but you have to have it for the feel-good ending.
Yeah. Sisko says the circle is broken, Colonel, which
good line.
Yeah, I was like, is this a bad pun? Is this okay? But delivered effectively. I do have an alternate episode. It's Kira and Dax. It kind of Thelma and Louising it, except for the ending. They do not go.
They don't die.
They don't.
They think they're going to die, and then O'Brien beams them out.
They phaser a guy in Texas. Oh no, that's not even where that's not that. No, they don't go to Texas and Thelma and Louise. That's right. They do kill a guy along the way though, but they do not go to Texas.
My alternate episode was just the political version of this instead of the action version, because I feel like the action was unnecessary. We discussed this. A quick conversation with Sisko and Krim at the beginning could have saved half the episode at least. So I would have appreciated more of a deeper, more complex political intrigue versus the action for the sake of action, which is what we got here.
You're right.
Which is why I have
Exactly.
slightly mixed feelings on this episode, even though I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah. Like as you said, if you're there, then you just roll credits, and I can't hum the DS9 theme as easy as I can do. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, not yet. You'll get there. It's only been one season.
Dun, dun,
You got time. DS9, I love DS9.
dun.
The theme. I know you don't yet.
It's still growing on me, but yeah.
By the time you get to season 4 and they do the revamp with the extra orchestration from season 4 on,
right.
I think you'll enjoy that even more.
Looking forward to that.
Oh, it was directed by Winrich Colby, one of our regular directors from TNG and DS9. Who is your shady character?
This isn't a positive way. Quark just doing the. I was like, is he going to sell the seats? Yes, he is. I don't know why. It shouldn't have been a question.
I had originally written Jaro just because, of course, he's doing shady crap. But at the end, when Win turned on him like that, I switched my vote to Win.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Which means for this 3-part, Jaro 1, Win 2 on the shady scale.
Yeah.
Because they're my 3 all 3 shadies, I went with them. But Win beat out Jaro in the end. Yeah. Who was your annoyance?
Colonel Day, just because, you know what? The weird part of, and I know Steven Weber's a good dramatic actor, obviously, is like I wish there'd been a little bit more of him being almost a, for lack of a better term, a humorous villain.
Yeah.
Whether it's, not quite twirling his mustache, but a little closer to that, I would enjoy. But I mean, he was fine, but yeah, he was annoying. He was no fun.
Same answer. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally on board with you. Who are you gonna have a drink with? Rom. I want to, I loved him being like, I know what you're up to, buddy. And then he outdoes he's learning. So yes.
I want to have a drink with him.
I very much enjoy Rom. I think you'll be pleased with his growth arc. He's not going anywhere. He's around.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
I am choosing Kira and Dax as a twosome because not anything dirty, although certainly, but not gonna break the Bechtel thing. I just want to hang out with them after that awesome mission they went on.
Yeah, that was great. That was like I said, I was so excited. I was like, as we got to the end of that first scene, I'm like, damn.
And really, I just want to be a fly on the wall as they have a drink together because I just want to observe that because I feel like them having a drink together is something that would be great to see.
Their banter was really good without being overly cutesy, and they were still had work to do. Yeah, and I mean Terry Farrell I've always liked, and obviously she's adorable. But actually, both of them are attractive women. They're good actors. It's good to see them do fun stuff.
So ranking the episode, this is the 3rd episode of the season. Mm-hmm. Right now we have part 1, Homecoming, and below that, part 2, The Circle. Where does the Siege go in the threesome?
I felt like it didn't fail like most part 3s do, which makes me
we've never had a part 3 before on Star Trek.
That's true. I'm sorry. I'm thinking in movie trilogies.
Yeah, I guess Star Trek 4 was a part 3.
Oh, that's true.
And that was not a failure at all. That was wonderful.
Not. I guess that's a good point.
Okay, so as much as I am a little bit frustrated that there was a glaring plot hole that the whole premise didn't work because you could have solved it. Yep. I did find it a lot more enjoyable than part 2, The Circle. Mm-hmm. It moved. It was fun. But I don't think it was as solid as part 1. So I would put it in the middle of the 2.
That's helpful what you said there, because I remember us talking about, even though we enjoyed, or maybe I just said this, we enjoyed the Circle. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of, we're buying time to get to part 3. Yeah, just a little bit. Not a ton.
Which, if they had made this a 2-parter instead of a 3-parter, you could have gotten rid of the buying time and then done the ending that I'm saying should have been the beginning of this episode.
Yep.
With Krim, but they decided to make it 3 parts. I give them credit for that. I don't want to attack that because I want to encourage them. I know it's already done and over with, but you want to encourage the longer story arcs.
Yes.
So, I do think this 3-parter was better than a lot of the next gen 2-parters overall.
And especially, I mean, some of the TNG 2-parters were great.
Sure.
Some of the best, but we definitely.
We've had some stinkers too.
The later we go, the more it's like 2 episodes of this.
Speaking of, next week, Gambit Part 2. Riker and Picard must find out why this intergalactic gang is looting archaeological sites. So we'll tie up their 2-parter. Until then, live long.
Unlikely Nahus. And prosper. R.I.P., buddy. R.I.P.
He did live long because he was in that prison camp for like 15 years, but
That's
he did not
true.
prosper.
He did not.
He had gray hair, but he wasn't that old.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?